Welcome to the Razors Inc. podcast with your host, Jonathan Farini. Beginning in the mid-'80s, two of the most original and imaginative filmmakers working today, Ethan and Joel Coen, made their mark through quirky, ironic, and absurd films like Raising Arizona, Fargo, and Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? But some 20 years later, they released a stark departure, creating something even darker and far more unsettling. So pour yourself a drink, pull up a chair, and hear Jonathan's take on movies, television, and today, a far cry from The Big Lebowski. Here's your host, Jonathan Farini.
There are many movies I watch once. There are movies I enjoy, recommend to a friend, maybe revisit years later. And then there are the rare films that stay with me, the ones that seem to deepen every time I watch them, the kind where I know exactly what's going to happen, and yet I lean forward anyways. For me, the film is No Country for Old Men. I watch it again and again, and it still grips me. Not because the plot is complicated. It's about a drug deal goes wrong in the Texas desert. Bodies everywhere, a suitcase full of money. One man finds it. And the moment he decides to take that money, something begins moving behind him. Something relentless, patient, and almost supernatural. But the reason the movie works so powerfully isn't just the plot. It's the casting. It's the quiet violence. It's the sense of American isolation out there in the West. And it's the subtle filmmaking decisions that slowly pull me deeper into the story every time I return to it. At the center of all this are the filmmakers themselves, Joel Coen and Ethan Coen, known together as the Coen brothers. The Coens have always had a remarkable ability to turn simple stories into modern myths.
Turn to the right!
The first time I met Ed was in the county lockup in Tempe, Arizona.
You're a flower, you are.
A day I'll never forget.
I do.
You bet I do.
Okay, then.
My lawless years were behind me. Our child-rearing years lay ahead. But biology conspired to keep us childless.
You go right back up there and get me a toddler. I need a baby hide. I got more than I can handle.
At the time, Ed's little plan seemed like the solution to all our problems. And the answer to all our prayers.
He's beautiful.
What? Are you kidding? We got us a family here.
Their films are filled with eccentric characters and strange coincidences, but underneath it all is a deeper fascination with fate, the feeling that once certain choices are made, the rest of the story becomes inevitable. When they adapted the novel by Cormac McCarthy, they recognized something important. The story didn't need to be louder. It needed to be quieter. And that decision changed everything, in my opinion, because the silence in this movie becomes one of its greatest weapons and protagonists. The casting is the first reason the film works so well for me, and it starts with Javier Bardem. As Anton Chigurh, Bardem created one of the most unsettling villains ever seen on screen by this viewer. But what makes him terrifying isn't rage or theatrics. It's calm. He speaks softly, politely. He asks questions. And then he flips a coin to decide whether someone lives or dies.
You married into it.
We lived in Temple, Texas for many years. Raised a family there in Temple. We come out here about 4 years ago.
You married into it.
That's the way you want to put it.
I don't have some way to put it. That's the way it is. What's the most you ever lost on a coin toss?
Sir?
The most you ever lost on a coin toss?
I don't know. I couldn't say.
Call it.
Call it.
Yes. I can't call it for you. Well, it wouldn't be fair.
I didn't put nothing up.
Yes, you did. You've been putting it up your whole life. You just didn't know it.
Well, look, I need to know what I stand to win.
Everything.
How's that?
You stand to win everything. Call it.
heads then.
Well done.
The genius of Bardem's performance is that Chigurh doesn't behave like a criminal. He behaves like a force of nature, almost like fate itself. You see it in the famous gas station scene. The tension builds slowly, not through music or editing tricks, but through the unbearable uncertainty of what Chigurh might do next. And Bardem never overplays it. His stillness becomes the threat. And then there's Josh Brolin as Llewellyn Moss. Moss is not a hero in the traditional sense. He's a welder, a Vietnam veteran, a hunter who knows how to survive in harsh environments.
I ain't got no water. Told you ain't got no agua. You speak English? Where's the last guy? Ultimo hombre, last man standing. There must have been one. Where'd he go?
When he stumbles across the aftermath of a drug deal gone wrong and finds the suitcase full of money, his decision feels almost understandable. He takes it, not because he's a criminal, but because it's there. Would you take it? I think I would, honestly, and I trust so do many of you, although not admittedly. From that moment forward, Moss becomes both hunter and hunted. What makes Brolin's performance compelling to me is his self-reliance. When he's wounded, he doesn't collapse dramatically. He stitches himself up in a motel room. He adapts, he improvises. There's something deeply American about that kind of resilience. The idea that survival depends on your own resourcefulness. No cavalry coming over the hill, just you. Then the story introduces another predator in the landscape, Woody Harrelson as Carson Wells. In my opinion, he almost steals the film. Harrelson's role is smaller, but it adds a fascinating layer to the story. Wells is another professional killer, experienced, confident, and pragmatic. But when he talks about Anton Chigurh, something changes. You see fear.
Just how well do you know Chigurh?
What do you want to know?
I just want to know your opinion of him in general. Just how dangerous is he?
Compared to what? The bubonic plague? He's bad enough you called me. Yeah, he's a psychopathic killer, but so what? There's plenty of them around.
Killed 3 men in Del Rio Motel yesterday and 2 others in that colossal goat out in the desert.
We can stop that.
Seem pretty sure of yourself. You've led something of a charmed life, haven't you, Mr. Wells?
In all honesty, I can't say that charm has had a whole lot to do with it.
And that moment tells the audience something crucial. If a man like Wells is afraid of Chigurh, then the threat I'm witnessing may be beyond ordinary criminal violence. Chigurh isn't simply competing for the money. He's enforcing some darker principle. And finally, the emotional anchor of the film, Tommy Lee Jones as Sheriff Ed Tom Bell.
I was sheriff of this county when I was 25 years old. Hard to believe. Grandfather was a lawman. Father, too. Me and him were sheriffs at the same time, him up in Plano and me out here. You can't help but compare yourself against the old-timers. Can't help but wonder how they'd have operated these times. There's this boy I sent to the electric chair at Huntsville here a while back. My arrest and my testimony. He killed a 14-year-old girl. Papers said it was a crime of passion, but he told me there wasn't any passion to it. Told me that he'd been planning to kill somebody for about as long as he could remember. Said if they turned him out, he'd do it again. Said he knew he was going to hell. Be there in about 15 minutes. I don't know what to make of that. I surely don't.
Bell isn't chasing money or revenge. He's chasing understanding. You know, throughout the film, he arrives just a little too late. Another crime scene, another body, another moment where violence has already passed through like a storm. Bell represents an older moral order, a belief that law enforcement once understood the world it was policing. But the violence he's seeing now feels different. It's random, unpredictable, unstoppable. And that realization slowly breaks his confidence. Now, here's where the Coen brothers' filmmaking becomes hypnotic. They use subtle techniques that many viewers don't consciously notice, but that shape the emotional experience of the entire film. The first trick is something radical for modern films. The film has almost no musical score. Most Hollywood thrillers rely heavily on music to tell the audience how to feel, when danger is coming, when tension should rise. But in No Country for Old Men, silence dominates. The desert wind, footsteps in a hallway, a distant truck engine. That silence forces the audience to lean in closer, to pay attention to every sound. And because there's no musical cue telling you when something terrible will happen, every quiet moment becomes unpredictable. The tension grows naturally, almost unbearably. The second subtle trick involves what the Coen brothers choose not to show. Several major events in the story happen off screen: gunfights, deaths, key turning points. In most action films, these moments would be huge set pieces, but here, the Coens deliberately remove them from view.
He shoots a desk clerk one day, walks right back in the next, and shoots a retired Army colonel.
It's hard to believe.
Just strolls right back into a crime scene. Now, who'd do such a thing? How do you defend against it? Well, good trip, Ed, Tom. Sorry we couldn't help you, boy.
We don't see everything. Instead, we see the aftermath: a broken door, a silent motel corridor, a sheriff stepping into a room where violence has already taken place. That choice shifts the focus away from spectacle and toward consequence. It makes the violence feel heavier, more real. And the third subtle technique is pacing. The Coens allow scenes to linger longer than most thrillers would dare. A character walks down a hallway. A man sits silently at a gas station counter.
Yes, sir?
A coin spins on a worn wooden surface. The camera doesn't rush. Those pauses create a strange sense of inevitability.
You could have the money, Anton.
As if the story is unfolding at the pace of fate itself, not hurried, not dramatic, just unstoppable. All of these choices combine to create a movie that feels less like a conventional thriller and more like an American parable. You see, to me, the landscape reinforces that feeling. Dusty highways, lonely gas stations, motels glowing in the dark. The story takes place in 1980, but it feels older than that, almost timeless. It echoes the mythology of the American West, in my opinion. What would John Ford think of this film? Lawmen, outlaws, hunters tracking prey across open land. But here, the old myths collide with a modern reality: drug cartels, automatic weapons, and a kind of violence that doesn't follow rules. And that collision leaves Sheriff Bell wondering if the world he believed in has simply disappeared. Which brings us to the ending. One of the most haunting endings in modern cinema, in my opinion. After all the pursuit and violence, the film ends not with a gunfight, but with a conversation. Sheriff Bell sits at his kitchen table and tells his wife about two dreams he had about his father. In the dream, his father rides ahead into the dark, carrying fire and a horn, waiting somewhere down the trail.
It was cold, and there was snow on the ground. He rode past me and kept on going, never said nothing going by, just rode on past. had his blanket wrapped around him and his head down. When he rode past, I seen he was carrying fire in a horn, the way people used to do, and I could see the horn from the light inside of it, about the color of the moon. And in the dream, I knew that he was going on ahead. And he's fixing to make a fire somewhere out there in all that dark and all that cold. And I knew that whenever I got there, he'd be there. Then I woke up.
And the movie ends. No resolution, no final victory, just a quiet reflection on time passing and the feeling that the world has become something unfamiliar. And there's no resolution on what happens to Chigurh. He simply wanders off wounded down the road. So why do I keep watching this film? Because it works like a myth. Every viewing reveals something new, a glance I missed, a line of dialogue that carries more weight than I realized, a philosophical question hiding beneath a moment of violence. And the casting is so perfect that every character feels like they belong to this strange landscape. I can't look away from Bardem. I root for Brolin's stubborn survival. I listen closely when Harrelson speaks. And when Tommy Lee Jones reflects on the changing world, I feel the exhaustion of a man who has spent his life trying to impose order on chaos. Listen, if there's a lesson hidden in No Country for Old Men, it might be this. Not every problem can be solved. Not every evil can be understood. Sometimes the world changes faster than the people trying to protect it. And sometimes the most honest thing a man can do is step aside and admit that the world now belongs to someone else. That realization is what haunts Sheriff Bell, and maybe it's what haunts me too. Because beneath the story of a drug deal gone wrong, the film is really about fate, about chance, about the uneasy truth that once certain choices are made, the rest of the road may already be waiting for the viewer, somewhere ahead in the dark. And somewhere out there on that road, someone may be already flipping a coin. Until I see you next time, please leave behind a soft footprint. And I select heads. Class is dismissed.
And the public took notice, with No Country for Old Men becoming the Coen brothers' most acclaimed film to date, winning 4 Oscars, including Best Picture, Director, Screenplay, and Supporting Actor along the way. But in some ways, No Country for Old Men was also a nod back to where it all started for the Coen brothers, with their debut film, Blood Simple. Stripped down, bare storytelling that did for film noir what No Country for Old Men did for the Western. You've been listening to the Razors Inc. podcast with Jonathan Farini. Be sure to check out Jonathan's collection of fiction at jonathanfarini.com. Also, look for Used Steinways, in which a young lady meets an unlikely mentor who reveals life lessons found inside pianos. Used Steinways, already published by Egophobia and Mobius magazines, it's been published again, this time in the April edition of CC&D magazine, Homespun Miracle. You'll find it at scars.tv. You can also drop an email anytime to razorsincpodcast@gmail.com.